Alrighty. Good morning, chat. Welcome in, welcome in. Hope you're all having a lovely day and taking care of yourselves. All right, so let's just do introductions. Yeah, let's start from the left. Sammy, go right ahead.
Hi everyone. Ooh, sorry. I'm Fairy Sammy. My pronouns are they and them. I'm an artist mostly, an oil painting, a fairy. And yeah, I stream a lot of my art over on my channel.
Hi, my name's Ducky. My pronouns are they, he. You might know me for my writing work for Deshadow and Vtubing and Newsdrop, where for more than 2 years now I've interviewed a ton of VTubers. I'm currently on hiatus from all my content creation things.
Hi, you guys know me. I'm Fee. I do the funny things on stream. I also, when I'm not doing stream content, I made the Vtubing and Identity video. Yeah, that was me.
I'm Sharon Rosebud, your local cringe queen and gremlin, and officially hacked since over a year ago. I do content on YouTube, both ASMR and LGBTQ type of vloggies and shit.
It has been lovely being able to go to Offkai Expo with you guys, by the way, being able to do the panel at Offkai Expo. It was very fun. Amid technical difficulties, admittedly, it was amazing, a very good experience. And I think we had a lot to say, which unfortunately, because of our short panel time, we were unable to talk about fully. So today is not only a redo because my recording got corrupted, but also a bit of an expansion, I suppose, part two. I guess I'll ask this question first. How do you all use VTubing to express your identity? Or why do you use VTubing to express your identity?
Because I want to be the very best.
That no one ever was.
I want to catch all the models. I want to have all of them, okay? I don't even know how many Pokemon are there. Oh, 5,000.
5,000 Pokemon. Well, that's certainly the answer that I was not expecting.
I mean, I can kick off the serious answers. When I started VTubing, a lot of the things that you see on the model are very representative of what I look like IRL. I own this coat. I own this scarf. The only thing I don't have is this flowing white hair. So VTubing for me was a way to live out my fantasies as a white hair anime boy, while being able to like come out of the public eye a little bit. VTubing for me wasn't just an outlet for me to create content through and like have this avatar instead of my real face out there. I managed to find and foster communities of my own to express different parts of my identity, my non-binariness, my homosexuality, because I am massively gay,
Same,
and like all these other things. So like as a start, wasn't necessarily for me to carve out the identity, but it's certainly been a very positive byproduct.
I didn't actually start out expecting to express any identity through VTubing. Originally, I just wanted to VTube, and I was very in denial about my gender identity, or rather, it's something that I ignored quite a bit. Because I had been, flip-flopping everywhere for the past, 5 years prior. But I guess it's through VTubing that I was actually, rather than because of my gender identity starting VTubing, rather it's because of VTubing that I was able to discover my gender identity a little bit clearer. I originally was just very ambiguous about my gender because I didn't want to have that conversation, and I didn't want the harassment that came with it. So I was like, you know what, you can call me whatever you want, but I will not confirm nor deny what my gender is. Which should have been a sign early on that perhaps I was actually gender fluid. I discovered about a year into VTubing that I was gender fluid, and then I realized rather recently that I was actually comfortable talking about it and admitting it to my community. It's like, when you come out to your family like, hey, I'm gay, and they're like, we know.
I've been there.
Oh no.
Oh, you finally figured it out, huh? Kind of in a similar boat, honestly. And when I looked at models, very soon I figured out I want to use a female model because fuck it, they look better at the more, and didn't even give it much thought, and was like, my voice sounds squeaky as fuck, even in IRL and on the phone. And when people see me, they quote unquote mistake me for a woman all the time. Okay, so I'm just gonna do it.
Hey, I get the reasoning.
So I decided to do it, and then it took me 6 months streaming and doing content. First off with Gwen from League of Legends as a model, and later with this model, until one day I was on TikTok, then I was on IRL, then I watched some videos from one topic, and I was like, fuck, I do not only want to be Sharon online, I'm Sharon offline as well.
So I know when Shy came out, but I'm curious if you don't mind me asking to you, Ducky and Fairy. when did you discover, your identity? Was it, I mean, I'm not sure, was it through VTubing or was it earlier on in life that you were like, you know what? This kind of fits.
I actually, I knew a lot about myself way before I started VTubing. So it all started on tumblr.com.
Oh no!
Most things do. Oh, to be 15 on Tumblr again. So yeah, that's kind of when I found out. But at the time, I was living at the end of nowhere in rural Brazil. So I was like, yeah, I'm not saying anything to anyone. You get to know yourself a little bit better and get more comfortable with yourself. And then when I found VTubing, I was like, oh, this is like being anonymous, but at the same time, not being anonymous. That's interesting.
Mhm.
It really does foster like a safe space for you to be more out, I suppose. Like be more honest with others about who you are.
So I have two coming out stories. So I came out as gay more than a decade ago now. So I've been out for a very, very long time as gay. I was also known as the worst gay man known to man. Because I was the gay man who didn't really show any interest in men. I just had a lot of I was fun and quirky like that, right? Until very recently. I guess for my non-binary side of things, that one was much more recent. So that one was in 2020 was when I came out as non-binary. And the way that I've described it to a bunch of people and the way that I feel about it is it's not I'm apathetic towards my gender. I'm apathetic towards being AMAB, which is what I am. I just see myself as a dude, as a person. And I don't want my assigned gender at birth to define who I am as a person, which is where my kind of non-binary feelings come from.
So, Ducky.
Oh, okay.
First question's for you, because I'm going in the order in the document here.
Okay.
Ducky, in your interview, you mentioned how VTubing has allowed you to present yourself in a way that real life situations don't really let you. In what way has VTubing helped you to do that?
I'm trying to remember the answer that I gave on the panel. Also the answer that I gave on the interview. Because, oh my god, that was quite a while ago now. And also trying to think about what I haven't said so far. I think it boils down to the communities that I interacted in. I had kind of this thing to uphold, this kind of image that I needed to uphold, and I didn't necessarily have a lot of time for exploration. So VTubing and having this avatar and this way of representing myself gave me the opportunity to explore sides of myself that I didn't necessarily feel like I had the luxury of doing before. Even if I maybe did theoretically, I just didn't feel like it. I was too focused on the grind or other things, right? So through VTubing, I was very much able to get more in touch with my sexual identity as a major thing. My gender identity not so much, but my sexual identity 100%. I started finding communities which were catered towards very LGBT focused spaces, and people who also were very accepting of that kind of content, especially leaning on the gay side of things for me, and also allowed me to kind of give me a sandbox to kind of experiment in, consume different forms of media, talk about different forms of media with people in safe spaces that perhaps I couldn't access before. And while VTubing is definitely not a prerequisite to access those safe spaces, it definitely helped me kind of feel comfortable enough to explore them in the first place.
So then, Sammy, my next question is for you. All right. This is a toughie, but you've answered before, so I will have faith in you. So, how do you use the medium to your advantage when creating your models? Is there anything that the medium allows you to do that otherwise wouldn't have been possible in any of your prior experiences?
I'm kind of the opposite of Ducky, where, Ducky was like, yeah, oh, I have this jacket in real life, and I just wanted it to my VTuber to reflect that. VTubing it can self-reflect, but it's a sandbox, right? You can do anything you want, and it is like a mirror that's gonna look at yourself, so you can, how I say it, you live vicariously through your model, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think the biggest thing, especially my community loves it, that I did for my model specifically to kind of reflect that is the teat toggle. Let me see if I can find it.
The what?
The teats. Oh, they're gone.
They're gone. So yeah, that's one of the things, but it's also fashion, right? This dress doesn't exist in real life. I wish it did. It's a nice dress. I was like, man, it would be nice if I could dress like this more in real life. So I went into like Google, and I was like, I tried to Google some pieces that look like this, and now my wardrobe day by day is starting to look more and more like my VTuber. It is like life does imitate art sometimes. It is kind of like that.
I actually don't look anything like my VTuber model IRL, but over time I've slowly started to change my IRL appearance to match my model more, and I think it's more like an example of like, because it felt so like right to me, then that helped me realize, hey, this is actually how I want to present in IRL as well. Shiren, my question for you. You have a very unique experience in that you originally weren't out as trans to your community. However, you chose to come out as trans rather recently. How did you express yourself prior? And do you feel that being open about your identity has helped you further express your true self in more ways?
It's not been that recently anymore, since it's been a time since the panel happened. Like how I was talking about, I started with Grand model and then later with this model, but all like Shiren was always female, but I wasn't open that I'm trans or didn't even know that I was. Like before that, I was like, yeah, that's me. I like to do these things. But then like slowly, very, very slowly, by doing like ASMR role plays and getting she heard in chat all the time, and like looking at my model and my voice with during editing and all of that. Yeah, and then like designing the 1.0, which you see right now. I was like, fuck, I want to be Shiren like all the time, right? So then I went on like whole journey. I watch like, so whenever I'm interested in a topic, I watch like and consume all the content for it. It doesn't matter if it's books, if it's YouTube, if it's Reddit, everything. And at some point I was just like, yeah, that's me. From finding out myself to telling my family to telling the community was like 5 to 6 weeks at most.
Do you guys think that VTubing is a truly safe space for LGBT individuals?
Oh, what a loaded question. I love this one. My answer to that is no. I actually don't think VTubing is a truly safe space for LGBT folk, especially trans people. VTubing has a long way to go to being overall an accepting medium. There are definitely niches of VTubing which are overwhelmingly accepting, some of the nicest places on the internet. And the thing is, you have to go and find those spaces for yourself. VTubing is kind of a bit what you make of it. And if you surround yourself with people who are very accepting of LGBT identities and generally accepting of what that people would call quote unquote progressive identities, POC or otherwise, you will find yourself those safe spaces to curate in. But I don't think VTubing as a whole, the VTubing populace, is a safe space for LGBT folk. I think there is significant issues with the fandom. VTubing at times brings together the worst of the gaming fandom and the worst of the anime fandom and the worst of the content creator fandom. And that coalesces into something that can be quite, in my opinion, quite bigoted and quite harmful to minorities. And there have definitely been way more instances in VTubing where a person has gotten away with harmful commentary about LGBT folks, especially trans people, just because they can and the fandom kind of supports it. That being said though, if you actively start VTubing or existing in the VTubing space and go and find the safe spaces for LGBT folks, and you go and find the kind of people in your community that you want to have in your community and like-minded people, you can definitely find those safe spaces.
I think that goes for any side of the internet, honestly. Like, your spaces are what you make out of it. If you're fucking around in my spaces, it's a instant ban hammer for you, honey. You know,
very, very, very protected.
Curate your spaces, I think, is the bottom line here. It's safe if you make it safe for yourself.
Doing writing a lot, you have articles that kind of leave the sphere of your control, right? And it was always my LGBT articles, specifically my articles focused on trans people in VTubing, which when they left the circle, that was my small following, became overwhelmingly negative. So like, yeah, there is definitely merit to, building your own little circle and like all that kind of stuff. But when things leave the stratosphere, you kind of can't control it much anymore.
I agree that you have to make your own safe spaces, and I'm gonna be honest, like most things people say to me don't fucking matter to me at all. Like honestly, if you have some bigoted things to say, go ahead. I don't care about it. I still delete every single thing and every single person gets banned because I do not want the other people that look at the content to have to see that. So every
Yeah.
time somebody says anything, I'm like, oh, you're a bitch, delete it.
When somebody finds my stream that's not expecting to hear a very obviously trans person, they are very hateful. Their immediate reaction is to be incredibly hateful. I have a bit of a thick skin. I can definitely, take that. We'll just laugh in a chat and move on. But I understand that there's people who, would prefer to just, delete it and move on, and that's their thing. Me, I'm a professional hater. I will hate on you professionally for being a jerk in my chat.
I did an interview with Arctic Aaliyah a while ago. She's quite a popular POC VTuber, and this article just sat on my YouTube channel for like a year without doing much traction. All the VTubing drama that happened with Kenji and like that then turned into just this slew of racism, right?
Yeah. I didn't
And
even see
all of
that
a
part of
sudden,
it.
these shorts that were on my channel, just sitting there with like 200, 300 views, maybe 500 if I was lucky, shot up to like 5,000, 10,000 views, and people were coming into like this short, which has just existed dormant for 8 months, and were like commenting parts of like the drama, people supporting, Kenji and Shizu, the other guy in the call, people not, and like there is just like this part of the VTubing community, and it's sadly not just a vocal minority, it's actually quite a significant part of the VTubing community, even if it's still a minority. I don't like classifying it as such, because it does detract a lot from the experience. But there is still a long way. The fact that this discourse happens in 2024 in VTubing, when a lot of the quote unquote real world has moved on from it and kind of just accepts other things, I think is very indicative of how far the space still has to go.
I will say though, for my answer personally, yes and also no at the same time. Here's my experiences, right? So, as I'm sure many people have pointed out and many people can tell, yeah, hi, I have a voice that really outs me as trans quite a bit.
You have a sexy voice.
Oh, thank you. At the very least, if I'm not outed as trans, I'm very easily outed as gay because of the way I talk, which is really just accidental. But here we are. I am in an area where I experience a lot of people like staring in public, right? I mentioned a train thing earlier that Chandler brought up. I one time had some dude, some old guy, like staring at me on a train, right? I was on my way on the Amtrak. I was just chilling, and this guy apparently was staring at me. My partner was beside me, trying to like figure out what his deal was. We got up for a stop, and this guy, just keeps staring. And my partner says, it's rude to stare. And we walk away, and his wife comes over and chases us down the train to try and get a word in with my partner. And I'm like, first of all, I didn't even know until my partner said that someone was even staring at me in the first place. Because like, well, the thing is, he's kind of like, I guess, this is such a weird way of saying it. He's a bit of my attack dog, right? Because I do get stares a lot in public, and this is kind of like the lesson that we learned from this, right? And it's really frustrating because it's like, I don't like getting stared at, and I feel unsafe when that happens, right? But I guess through VTubing in particular, and being behind a model is, yes, I'm gonna get hate because of my voice, right? And it doesn't match my model, by some standards. My voice doesn't match my model, but because of that, I do still get hate, but it's much easier to deal with because I'm not getting somebody staring at me. I'm not getting somebody, I don't fear for my safety, thinking that someone's going to physically harm me because, I sound different. And, there's definitely big VTubers out there who do support the transphobia, and maybe people aren't willing to admit that, but I'm just gonna say that here now. There's people out there, big VTubers, who just support this and are totally fine with it, and that's not cool. And people like that will definitely be the kind of people to sour the euphoria of being trans in the VTubing space. But I don't think that should deter you, so long as you work hard to create a safe space for yourself and be careful who you interact with.
At the end of the day, VTubing is just a subgenre of content creation, right? So of course, stuff that happens in the content creation genre and sphere happens in VTubing to different degrees or same degrees as well. So it's no different. And I'm gonna say there is weird things sometimes happening in the VTuber community, especially on fucking Twitter, which, oh my god, do not go on Twitter if you want to stay sane.
Yeah, that's my advice too. Don't go on Twitter.
Yeah.
Save yourself. It's
Yeah.
not worth it. Inevitably, you will at least get one person at some point who doesn't like the way you sound or look, and that's the way it is. All right, I would say it's a problem with the community itself, but I would say it's actually just an internet problem. Whether you choose to let that get to you, whether you choose to let that stop you, that is entirely on how you go about it and the people that you surround yourself with. If you have a strong support circle, then you will be absolutely fine, I guarantee you. But don't go into spaces where you are putting yourself at a risk of being hurt if you are not able to handle people coming after you.
I was honestly surprised. Like, of course, if you think about it a little bit, of course, once your content gets like eyes on it, you will always have a lot of messages, some of them nice, most of them nice, honestly, some of them bad. But what I did not expect, that happens like way earlier than you think. You don't need to have like 10,000 views to get these kind of comments, right? Even if your video or stream has like 10, 100, 1,000 people, right? Even sometimes like 5, you will have all kinds of comments because so many people just find it. You just need to be prepared that even if one person sees your stuff, you will get comments you would never have thought about before.
I think I kind of agree with all of you guys, like a little bit here and there. Like, I do agree with the Kings, like as in like the general VTuber community, if I can even call it that, is very bigoted towards any sort of minority, really. But I do also think like VTubing has the potential to foster a really accepting community if you work for it, and you are gonna have to work really, really hard on it. You're gonna get a lot of hate, probably more than like cis straight VTubers. The community I personally foster, like, it's very accepting, very sweet. Everyone is honestly a sweetheart. I can't say anything bad about the space I created for myself. But as soon as I put my little toe out and I just take a peek, I'm like, what the hell you guys are doing out there?
I don't want this to stop anyone from considering VTubing if they are LGBT or in any sort of minority identity to want to explore their identity, because ultimately the community is one thing, but you can curate that. You can't really, the power of VTubing to be able to convey parts of identity that you really want to highlight and tap into things that you really love about yourself or about your background or things that you want to explore. There's no better medium for it. I guess for like other people here, does anyone have like an experience that was like, wow, this has completely renewed my faith in VTubing? And that's like a very like wholesome, positive experience related to their identity that was like, you know what? Maybe things are all right. Maybe the kids aren't so bad.
Ooh,
I definitely have my own to like relate to
for
this.
sure. I did a little clip of my stream where, because I didn't say this here, but I also go by some neuro pronouns. They are optional, calm down. And I was just talking about my neo pronouns on stream, and I clipped that and I posted it on my short content platforms. And like, I knew everyone on my stream was gonna be.
I remember this video.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, like, sure, I got the hate comments, but what warmed my heart is that like everyone in the comments was so sweet about it, and to the people who weren't, like the sweet people, like came into their comments and were like, "What the hell? Shut up!"
When you have a supportive community backing you, it's like, well, whatever. I can just let it just fall off my back, whatever. Which is why I stress it's so important to have a loving and supportive community that really supports you and have a supportive circle. Okay.
I don't know if this restored my faith in VTubing, because back then I was a very naive individual. But it was my trans article in November 2022. I went through a lot of work to do that article, and I really, really loved putting the story together. Many of the people that I interviewed in that article, I still talk to this day. They are some of my closest friends in VTubing, some of my closest friends IRL for some of them. So, that article really did a lot for me. But I think the article that actually renewed faith for me, and the moment that I had faith renewed in the VTubing community, was I was very, very much fortunate enough to talk to Usan, unnamed, if you don't know them on Twitter. They're a very, very popular JP VTuber, and I got to interview them, and seeing the community they had fostered and the reaction to the article and the way that I got followed by like 1 million new rays, and they were all like very nice and sweet on the posts, and then being surrounded by the positivity of what a truly supportive community in VTubing looks like, especially at a time where I felt like I was struggling with my own community, my own identity in VTubing. That really lifted my spirits. So it doesn't even have to come from your community. It can be from connecting with another person's community and you know, working your way up from there. And I've definitely found my own safe spaces in VTubing that aren't just, you know, my private Discord server with a few friends, you know. I have a couple of other Discords now that I do chat in from time to time because, you know, there are definitely some lovely people out there.
What really restored my faith was, one, making the Vtubing Identity video, but also, two, going to Offkai Expo and people, God. So I know that you guys were remote, but I went to do the panel in person at a in the streaming room there. But basically, what happened was after the panel, a lot of people actually came up to me and met me in the atrium afterward. And I cannot express the euphoria of meeting, you know, fellow trans individuals that, you know, coming up to express to me like how the panel helped them and like, you know, hearing their stories and God, like feeling that community, right? And that same thing goes for Vtubing Identity. I cannot express to you how many times I've had people come to me and say, hey, Fee, your video inspired me to come out to my loved ones. Your video, you know, helped me take that first step toward VTubing. Your video, you know, helped someone else I know even, right? I originally started doing it because I just wanted to get a video made for Offkai Expo. But then it ended up becoming a much bigger project than I anticipated. And it gained a lot more support than I ever could have imagined. I expected to wake up the next day to maybe, you know, I'd be excited if I reached 500 views on the video. I was so hype. I was like, if I reach 500 views, then I'll know the content direction that I'm gonna take. And then I got over 14,000 views on the video as of today.
Yay!
Which is absolutely bonkers. I think we're nearing 15K actually, big milestone. Sure, there was definitely hate, you know, that as with any online space, people coming in and voicing their you know, little turd-tastic little opinions. But but you know, overall of the good was there. I mean, I not only was the messages on the video itself, but messages on the posts, you know, messages that I still get in DMs to this day, you know, people just are so supportive and loving, and I think if you can look past the negatives, there's so much positive to look forward to.
As Fee was talking about earlier, I at some point had a decision if after I came out to myself, if I wanted to come out to my community or not. And I don't think I ever talked about this before, but a huge inspiration to do so was Yuko EX on YouTube. She streams there and does trans content as well. One of the very first videos that, of course, YouTube algorithm is amazing and showed me was her coming out to her community. And I was like, oh my God, that's an option. I can do that. I wanna do that. And then I planned it together with my manager, made like a little like video and everything. And that was pretty cool. And then honestly, I had like one person who left. Didn't even say anything, just I noticed that person was gone. Other than that,
I was like, well, see ya. Wouldn't want to be ya.
Yeah, everybody stayed and was so supportive. And ever since making these videos, of course, the first few 3 videos was like YouTube was figuring out whom to send them to, and I had some weird comments. But after that, only supportive comments.
You can take the negativity with a grain of salt, but we're also here to kind of dispel the negativity as well, being like, hey, like it is manageable. When you have to go and enter any new space, whether it's in real life, whether you're joining a new group in real life, or you're joining a new group online, it can be daunting, it can be intimidating, but you know, VTubing has a lot of positives, and it's a lot easier to kind of navigate that if you're not sure, if you're struggling.
I think one of the biggest things about identity is that you never really truly stopped growing. You never really truly stopped changing. You can be super sure, yes, that's my identity, this is who I am, and I'm very confident in this. But then a year later, you get proven wrong by yourself, which is something that you need to be open to, right? Because VTubing will change you and make you discover more about yourself. whether you want it to or not.
And you can change with it as well. You know, there's definitely that area where like you can go into VTubing with one set idea, but if things change over time, there's nothing that, you know, has to stop you from looking at it differently or approaching it from a different angle. Yes, getting new models can be expensive, but you know, there's definitely other ways of getting around that cost barrier. And, you know, at the end of the day, you can't necessarily put a price on your own self-worth and your own kind of happiness. So if you fall out of love with your model and you want to identify as something else, there is definitely tools out there and definitely mediums out there where you can do that for cheap or for free.
Examples, Pic Crew, even like a PNG tuber is a cheaper option. Vroid, which I know gets a lot of hate. I know that Vroid gets a lot of hate,
great.
I promise. It's so much better than it used to be. I would recommend Vroid because that's what I used to VTube up until March. I didn't get a 2D model until March, and I did just fine.
I also just straight up started out on streaming with like, I went onto Pic Crew, I selected creations that had commercial licensing so that I could put them on stream.
Reminder that there's people out there who succeed with just a stickman. You can succeed. It's okay. Please, for the love of all things in the world, please check your licensing. I have seen too many instances, and especially recently.
I'm gonna get
I was gonna say, not naming names or pointing fingers, but there is definitely one instance.
Check licensing. If you get shit off of booth, check licensing. Make sure that you're allowed to use it for commercial purposes because streaming is a commercial purpose. I want to note something, and I put this in my little document here because, you know, notes. You guys need to keep in mind, you don't need to be LGBT to find VTubing a rewarding way of expressing yourself. Because, a reminder in case you guys aren't aware, which I'm sure you are, identity is comprised of many, 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 many things. It could be your hobbies. It could be the things that you do in your free time. It could be the movies that you enjoy watching. Whether it's, you know, expressing, you know, your disabilities, or, you know, for plus size individuals, you know, if you dress alternative, if you're a person of color. I love people that, you know, express their identity like as much as possible through like the way that they create their model. Like, for example, our very own Fairy Sammy over here. We actually have some questions here. Do you believe that the VTubing community people can have their own opinions, and as long as we respect each other and our opinions, we can be a thriving community that is more inclusive and safe?
God, I wish that was our reality. Like, you know, like the futuristic city meme? Like, we need that, like, question, like, impact font, white text, black outline. I want that for VTubing. I want that for life. I want that for society as a whole. I am now, I can't speak for everyone else here, but I'm now a lot more reserved about my opinions, and I don't share as much as I used to. Due to my own experiences in the VTubing community, but I am also a very unique case. I occupy a niche of one in VTubing, and so that's why I don't do it. But there are definitely people who I know who over time have become more open to expressing their identity on VTubing and their opinions more broadly because of VTubing. So, you know, your mileage may vary.
Well, I don't agree with using that self-expression to hate on others. Unfortunately, and fortunately, it is your prerogative. You have the right to be a hateful person, but that does not free you from the consequences of being a hateful person. What would you say is the biggest way that your VTubing experiences have impacted your off-stream life? The lessons learned, people met, etc. Shire's like, I know the one.
Yeah, of course, for me, it would be like coming out, right? Because I learned through VTubing and then I did in real life as well. So there can be nothing bigger for me. So I'm interested in what for you guys it is.
For me personally, I touch grass 10 times less. I mean, I didn't touch grass very much before, but 10 times less now because everything that I do, all my work, my social life is online now. Exactly. At some point, if you want to keep pushing higher and higher, you're going to have no life. As for how it's mostly changed my life, I think it's something I've already talked about actually is, you know, I before VTubing, I was not willing to admit my identity. Full disclosure, hi, I was born a woman. I was assigned female at birth. But I eventually, at some point, around 17 years old, I came out as trans male while I lived at a boarding school. When I went to college, sure, I was much more accepted there. And I was out as trans male for a good, 3 years, I think. But then I started getting into VR chat, actually. And it was actually through VR chat that I was like, yeah, I'm gonna start presenting female now. And I had this flip-flop thing going on for a while, right? Although it took me a little while it wasn't until I started VTubing that I was able to truly accept that part of myself and go, hey, maybe the reason I enjoy being ambiguous is because I, at my core, am ambiguous.
VTubing, not as much as an identity, it did give me a place to connect with like-minded people. But I've met many people who I don't think I could meet in real life, you know, if it wasn't for VTubing. I think the space can foster really amazing individuals and like getting to meet them and making connections and making friendships.
I would say that VTubing has had like a net neutral on like my off-stream life. Like there's a lot of positives to come from it. Like two of my closest friends, like my absolute ride or die friends, I met through VTubing. The negative is like while we've talked about self-expression and self-identity, I kind of had a lot of that stripped away from me while I've been a part of the VTubing community. And so like I balance those things out where like, you know, like I met some great people, but I also lost a part of me through VTubing. And you know, things will balance out like over time. Like I'm sure that like, you know, I'll be able to reclaim the parts of me that I lost a little bit to some of the critics that I had through my life in VTubing.
Yeah, fuck the critics. They suck.
In terms of my off-stream life, like, you know, VTubing got me through a very rough period of my life where I went from having a lot of social interaction to having none. And so that was a very important thing for me, was to have someone that I could, when I finished work, I had someone that I could go home to.
Do you believe that in the VTubing community that there are not many unique VTubers? Like there's so many of the same kind of types, like cat girls, fox, dog, demon, dragon. Don't you dare!
The big number one fan and biggest simp of any foxboy and foxgirl VTubers. But honestly,
Well,
I think the diversity. I think the
know.
diversity in VTubing in terms of design choices. Maybe when like the visible ones, I guess. Like yeah, the space is pretty saturated with the same generic anime girl or anime boy types at the top, but there are so many different ways of expressing yourself through VTubing that I have not experienced in any other online community.
You could curate your Twitter timeline. If you want to see more of something else, say, oh, there's too many Fox VTubers. Okay, you know, don't tell Ducky, but if there's too many Fox VTubers on your timeline, you can click the little dots there and say, hey, I'm not interested in this post. What is the main difference between the worlds of indie and corporate VTubing and identity in those spaces, respectively?
Corporate VTubing can be very samey. There's a lot of models that all fit specific beauty standards, I will say, and you don't get a lot of diversity in design that you do get in the indie space. However, I think it is disingenuous to say that corporate VTubing as a whole has a stereotype and you must fit that stereotype or else you perish. I think there are plenty of VTubers who you know, have their own respective identities that are a part of their content and that are supported. And it's not just the quote unquote Western agencies that do it, but you also have it from the Japanese based agencies or even like other international based agencies, right? Niji Sanji, for example, has many VTubers who are out for either their gender or sexual identities. They have multiple non-binary VTubers now. Hololive as well, less on the gender diversity front, but definitely on the sexual diversity front. There's definitely a lot of expression that happens there. When you come into the Western space, when you look at like your V shoujos, your idols, and even like your smaller, what I like to call like tier 2 or tier 3 agencies, like the ones which are definitely not as big, but like, you know, they are part of a group, say like your Mythos, for example. They all have such a diversity in terms of the identity that they allow for expression. I think it's pretty disingenuous to say that, which a lot of people do, that people say that, oh, corporate VTubing is very rigid, like you have to be XYZ, you have to be super polished. You don't. It's company to company. Do you have to be more polished? Yeah, you do, because you're representing something that's bigger than yourself. You're representing a bigger organization, but that doesn't mean and there's restrictions within that, but that doesn't mean you are a robot. There is still yourself inside that model.
Is it just me, or is it a turn-off, if at all, that a VTuber brings to the table is just their LGBT or person of color?
Who's doing that though? All the like POC VTubers I know and like LGBT, trans, they all bring something else as well to the table. Like no one's just that, right?
this is always thrown out as like a misnomer, right? Like people like will be like, oh, this person talks about their identity maybe like once a month, and then they're like, oh, you know, they throw up their nose and be like, oh, all they do is they talk about their identity, right? Like all they do is they talk about they're gay or they're trans or like, you know, they're POC, like, you know, they have it so rough. There are definitely people, I won't just like flat out say, no one does that. There are definitely people who do it. Again, it's much of one of those things where there's a lot more nuance to it, where it's often overstated. But I think the thing is to get to that level, there's a lot there to have to get to that point. And I think that point's often overstated.
Oh yeah.
So if you think I think if a VTuber all they bring is that they're LGBT or POC, follow them for a month. You know, check out their posts, and if you still believe that that's all they bring, unfollow them. I have a few VTubers in mind, right? That I'm not going to name them, but there are a few VTubers that I have in my mind where every single time they pop on my timeline, it's always a 500-word Twitter blue post. And it's got similar beats, right? And like time after time. And I'm like, I always read it and I go like, you know what? Like if someone, all they saw of this person was these Twitter blue posts, then yeah, I could see how that they could like come to that conclusion. But the thing is then like these people also post like 90% of their content, which is totally something else.
If you take a step back, it's like if I'm a diamond player in League, for example, right? And all I ever yap about is being a diamond player in League. Like nobody's gonna care of the week, right?
Yeah,
Like,
you just hit my personality
congratulations,
from
you want a
like
cookie?
3 years ago.
I have experienced people like that. But I think the main takeaway here, right, is not to just dwell on the fact that other people do that. Screw them, don't follow them, clearly they're not worth your time. But ignore them. At the same time, keep in mind that when I talk about VTubing and identity here, what I mean is not just your identity as a trans individual or your identity as a person of color or your disability alone, right? What I'm saying is your identity can be expressed in so many ways, right? Yeah. And you can take multiple parts of your identity and mash it all into what you present yourself as online. Whether it's through the way that your model looks, the way that you act, the things that you do, you know, things that you put in. You can even put like pins on your model if you want to that like represent all your interests. But
and like it's the same thing as like, you know, like I'm not going to yuck someone else's yum, right? Like if a person wants that to be their brand and identity, cool, they can make that their brand and identity. I just won't interact with it.
At the end of the day, you're not obligated to watch anyone. So watch who you like, and you know,
nobody owes you their time. Do you see that sometimes your VTuber persona mixes with your IRL life?
Oh my, yeah.
It's hard for me when my VTuber is literally IRL me. Like, you know, like they're the same thing.
Ooh, I suppose it is hard to separate them sometimes, for sure. A lot of me is in my VTuber. I mean, it's my literal face, right? Like,
oh wait, I didn't realize actually that's actually your face.
Yeah, it's a self-portrait. I painted over a self-portrait.
That takes so much self-love. I respect you a lot for that. Oh my
Honey,
gosh.
we're trying. Look,
I love that.
It's always a fight.
Don't be ashamed to include like parts of your real self, you know, your truest self in your model. And I think everyone here is a pretty good example of including parts of themselves in their model.
I gotta say, I have been having problems ever since doing streaming, because the shy in front of my name is there for real life. I'm very shy. I do not talk to people. I'm always a good little bean.
I would never believe that.
But ever since streaming, I've become unhinged in real life. I will scream and sing and listen to music at work and do like all these things. It's just like
I'm sure it's shocking to your coworkers too. They're like, "What the heck happened?" I'm pretty much the same IRL. I would say VTubing has helped me be more open about not only my gender identity, but also my personality, right? I'm a lot less reserved IRL now. I'm much more extroverted than I was before. Anyone here would have you believe that I'm a fucking extrovert, but I promise you right now, I am an introvert. I have the lowest social battery ever, and streaming takes up 99% of it. So the rest of it goes to family for an hour, and then I run as fast as possible. I had fun with you guys. I will sign off here and write out to somebody. But thank you again so much for coming to talk with me and you know, telling your stories. It means a whole lot. I know you probably told your story a million times, but it means a lot that you've said it again now. So thank you. Go follow my lovely collab partners, my co-panelists, my collab partners. All right. If you don't, I will find you in your sleep. You will not see it coming. You will cry. Bye.
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 Bye bye.